Okay, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andris Sprūts. I am Director of Latvian of International Affairs, and of course, I have a great pleasure to welcome all of you today in the afternoon for the book presentation. I should take it in my hands, and also the sofa discussion. So I hope it will be very good discussion. Topic is important one. Topic is always timely one. It's Germany. Germany has been dubbed some years ago as a reluctant Baltic nation. But I think in recent years we can see more and more the indispensability of Germany in the region. So I think we see the development of the German presence. So I think this debate will be on the scope, on the aspects, on elements, on directions, on trajectory, on evolution, on Germany's presence in the region. Germany is our partner, but of course also this book presentation would be impossible without a good partnership. And I'm happy here to say that the Konrad Adenauer is with us for today's discussion. And Konrad Adenauer Foundation, of course, has been very instrumental in doing together this project with us, and especially Elena Klieve, whom I would say has been indispensable partner in many ways for the book promotion and putting the project together. So Elena Klieve, the floor is yours, and thank you.
Thank you, Andres. Hello, Excellencies. I am not used to talking in a microphone. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure on behalf of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung to welcome you here in this special venue with this very good-looking book, in my opinion. And I know for a fact it's not only good-looking, it's rich in content as well. With this book, a long journey comes to an end. Our partner may agree. But let me take you back to the beginning, to the initial idea, how we started and what has brought us here today. Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, the office in Riga, is, as you may know, not only dealing with the Baltic countries or cooperating with institutions here, but also with the Nordic countries. So we may say that the Nordic-Baltic perspective is what we have in mind when we work here in the region. So the intention was to bring together the think tanks all around the Baltic Sea to further establish the network of cooperation. So I am a bit lost in my notes. This publication should be considered as a first part of a long-term project. Latvian Institute of International Affairs is a natural partner for us, being based here in Riga, but we will be hopping from country to country to further move on with working on relevant topics for the region. And the next stop is going to be Denmark. We will have a publication like this with the Danish Institute of International Affairs. So enjoy this discussion. And at this point, I want to thank for the good cooperation, especially to Diana Potyomkina, who is not here today, who was the leading force in the beginning, and Elizabeth, who is smiling, which I'm glad to see she is, because she did all the work. Thank you, Elizabeth, and enjoy the discussion.
Thank you, Ellie, and I'm smiling too, actually. So it's not only Diana and Elizabeth is smiling, but I hope that exactly so, that it is just the beginning of the journey, and the discussion on Germany's role in the region, it will continue, be it in Riga, be it in Copenhagen, be it in other places, because of course it is a very important subject, and certainly it's always timely, as I said previously, to continue the discussion. So Elena, thank you so much, and thank you to the Konrad Adenauer for partnership. And with this, I'm happy to give the floor to Elizabeth Vizgunova, who is a research fellow at the Latvian Institute of International Affairs, but at the same time has been really driving force in terms of the substance, in terms of the having a very challenging tasks to putting the authors together and motivating them to be on a timeline and having this publication to succeed. So Elizabeth, the floor is yours already to have a interesting job of moderating the discussion. Please.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. I will not prolong the procedural beginning of the event. Well, we are here to discuss Germany, a country which seems to grasp and always be present in the media headlines internationally, especially when it relates to the EU. Germany is an undisputed European powerhouse, both economically and politically. In fact, at the concluding chapter of this book, it has been labeled a growing partner in the Baltic Sea region. However, is that the case? It seems that the feeling of uncertainty is mixed with undisputed approval. This translates different into different capitals, and luckily we have distinguished and rigorous experts here to give us their viewpoints on this topic. It seems that with the stationing in Lithuania, Germany has really shown its potential to become a credible security partner in the Baltic Sea region. However, has Germany already given all it has, or does it have more to give? What does eventually Germany want to see itself being in the Baltic Sea region? How does it want to be seen? And what is more to come? Luckily, I am not the one to answer these questions. Let me say that this project is not the first one that the Latvian Institute of International Affairs is carrying out on the topic of perceptions. In 2014, a publication on perceptions of Arcticness in the subarctic region was already published in cooperation with the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Therefore, this has actually been a much longer endeavor to understand how do perceptions, a very vague constructivist concept, impact the very practical decision-making of decision takers in the EU and the region especially. Well, without further ado, I think we can proceed to the panel. Allow me to introduce Monika Sos, a postdoctoral fellow at the Darnher Forum, which is a forum between the LSE and Hertie School of Governance, who is representing Poland today. Dr. Amelie Thuysen, who is an assistant professor at the Center for War at the University of Southern Denmark, and Barbara Kunz, who is a research fellow at CERFA. She has also worked at the Center for Baltic and East European Studies, Bertelsmann Stiftung, and many other places. Eventually, Ambassador Olga Sklava, who was the ambassador plenipotentiary at Germany from 2008 to 2013. Now his career is distinguished enough, so I will probably not proceed, otherwise I'm going to mess up. Shall we perhaps start? Before that, I wanted to mention, this time you'll also have to work. You haven't actually come to discussion where you can relax. If you see here on the screen, www.slido.com is an application which you can just enter in your phone. So basically look for it in Google, and you can enter the event code T234. And at one point of the discussion, I'm going to give you a signal and you'll have to participate in order to give some feedback on what is happening here and what are your thoughts on Germany's engagement in the Baltic security. There we go. And now, please, let's start with Amelie. How has Germany's engagement in the security of Denmark changed since March 2014 and the occupation of Crimea? And how does this actually link to Germany's self-perception? Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my first time in Riga, so I'm very excited to get to know the city. So thank you for that. Thank you also for coming and listening to me and hearing a little bit more about the Danish perception of Germany and the Baltic Sea region. It's an interesting one, but let me answer the question first, and then we can dive into why this is interesting a little bit later, maybe. So, if I start sort of taking the second bit first, for Denmark, of course, the perception of its security situation has changed greatly with the occupation of Crimea in 2014. It's really when Denmark started sort of being aware again that Russia does pose a threat, and while, for Denmark at least, it might not be sort of the traditional territorial threat, they are such an their focus lies so much on NATO that they can clearly see that this is a threat for the Baltic Sea region, and therewith for NATO, and therewith also for Denmark. And that's really because for them, in the Danish perception, the occupation of Crimea and the crisis in Ukraine has shown how Russia is willing and able to use its military means to achieve strategic goals. And it created like a fundamental insecurity, especially for the Baltic Sea region, where sort of the Danish interests are really to keep free navigation in the Baltic Sea happening, and to sort of keep the region as free from tensions as possible. So for them, the two things that Denmark sort of focuses most on when it comes to the threat perception in the region is sort of the aggressive posturing by Russia that's been shown in exercises, sort of spontaneous denial of free navigation and access that never has sort of created any serious confrontations, but it has been enough of a hassle and enough of a disruption that that's something that concerns Denmark deeply. And at the same time, of course, the weapons systems that are stationed in Kaliningrad and the idea of anti-access area denial capabilities that Russia has. And that's, of course, because Denmark, due to its geographic location, is very much focused on access to the Baltic Sea, and sort of hence also focused on the threat of that being denied by Russia. When we sort of now link that back to the first bit of the question and how Germany's involvement has changed since then, if we look at sort of concrete examples of what Germany means for security in Denmark, it hasn't really changed a lot, to be fair, because Denmark focuses mainly on NATO and its security, and they're mainly on its strategic partners, the US, the UK, and France. And that's due to different perceptions of what military power should be used for. So Denmark has been very militarily active, taken on the hard military bits in Afghanistan and Iraq, where Germany has been sort of much more on the passive side, and that's why they don't sort of cooperate a lot in regarding sort of specific military things, because they have very fundamentally different opinions on what military power should be used for. But of course, it's visible also in Denmark that Germany has taken a much more active role, especially sort of in Danish perception starting with 2014. And that creates this idea that sort of cooperation is to come, right? And that Germany is a partner for the region, even though there might not yet be great sort of cooperation happening, the potential is there. And that's very, very welcome in Denmark, sort of that Germany now takes security concerns of the region serious. And for example, German initiatives like the Framework Nations concept, the Baltic Maritime Component Command, these are things that are very well received in Denmark and are very much supported from Danish side. So while Germany's engagement in the security of Denmark hasn't sort of concretely changed a lot, the environment has changed, and that sort of affects the perception of Denmark in the sense that Germany is very much on the radar as a more potential, sort of stronger cooperation partner for the future.
Thank you very much. Perhaps if I may take the advantage of taking a follow-up question and asking, well, this book especially, I think, focuses on sort of giving some guidance to Germany and German foreign policy makers and what Germany should do. But is there something that the Baltic Sea region capitals should return to Germany? Are there some actions that the Baltic Sea region should take as a unit or perhaps separately?
I mean, from a Danish perspective, certainly, I think focus should shift more towards Germany. I think Germany has been ignored too much when it comes to security cooperation. And there's multiple reasons for why it makes sense, also in regards to the Danish opt-out from security and defense cooperation, for example, with PESCO and the developments happening at a European level, where I think it would be very good for Denmark to stay much more appraised of what's happening and consider working more closely with Germany to sort of have a bit of a diplomatic backdoor if possible. Especially also considering, the election of Trump and Brexit, which might not directly affect NATO, but I mean the discussions have definitely been going on. So that's certainly a step that I would recommend to Denmark specifically.
Thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the Slido poll is already open. I will kindly ask you to take out your phones, which is rather unusual for these kinds of formats, and give your vote. And vote, as we recently have elections, you probably already have a habit on what you actually think. Should Germany be a leader in the security of the Baltic Sea region? You can see the options on your screen. And we will see the results after the next intervention, which will be by Monica Sos. If I may ask, which are the main questions that characterize Germany's engagement in the Baltic Sea region? Is it security, economy, energy, politics?
Question to the question.
Please.
What does it mean, regional player? Can you explain?
In this case, we talk about the way it should engage in regional formats such as NB6, NB8, the Council of the Baltic Sea States, etc. Thank you. By the way, this is also a category which is viewed in all the articles in the book, so you can definitely have a read later on. Sorry to interrupt. Please. Monica.
Is it on? Yes. First of all, I would like to thank you all for coming and thank you for having me here. It's a challenge to speak from the Polish perspective. I'm from Poland actually, but this is not the challenge. The challenge is that the Polish perspective is also a very general one, and it has changed substantially since we have the not so new government, but still the so-called new government. But I will do my best, and please forgive me for any generalization that I will make during my observations. So. The question is about the characterization of the Germans' involvement in the region from the Polish perspective. So to answer that, I would like to make 3 observations. The first will be a more general in its nature, and it relates to the broader context of Polish-German relationship, which has, as I said, been undergoing a profound change since 2015, since the Conservative Law and Justice Party took over the leadership in the country. One of the examples why the relationship has been changed or is changing is the growing instrumentalization of history that we observe in the political discourse in Poland. So the references that goes to the shared history between Poland and Germany, primarily, of course, to the World War II, are common nowadays. And just to give you an example that also illustrates very well, I guess, the relationship, the attitude of Poland towards Germany as a security partner, I'd like to quote the party leader Jarosław Kaczyński, who is also de facto the leader of the country, who said in a reference to the attempts of the previous Polish government to strengthen the NATO presence in the country in an interview that German NATO troops should be not allowed on Polish soil for at least, I quote, 7 generations. Apparently, he did not know that German troops are already in the country, among others, since the headquarters of the multinational Corps Northeast is in Poland, and there are Germans within this corps, but never mind. So there is a mistrust. This is the first observation between Poland, or from the Polish perspective, towards Germany playing an important role, not only in the Baltic region, but in the security of Europe whatsoever. There is, of course, security cooperation going on between these two countries. I mean, the geographic proximity and the neighborhood and the fact that Germany is the biggest Polish neighbor and the most important one is also important and obviously important, but the cooperation shifted towards economic cooperation and towards a more, I would say, general one, political one, not really specified towards security. So that's the first observation that I would make. The second observation goes in the direction of Polish ambitions, and for Poland, as I said in the first observation, Germany power in the region is mostly economic one, not necessarily security one, since Poland perceives German role as a security provider as rather restrained. The reason for that, it's, as I said, the ambition of Warsaw. Warsaw tries to promote itself as the biggest security provider, maybe not the biggest. The biggest is, of course, the United States from the Polish perspective, but the second biggest, I would say, or the regional security provider, because of the largest population, the largest defense budget, and, of course, the domestic industrial base, which is the largest from all post-Soviet countries. And with this argumentation, Poland also linked its allegedly close ties towards the United States. We all read the newspaper from last week about the recent developments with Port Trump, so the permanent bases that should be installed in Poland, according to President Trump and according to our president. But we will see how it goes. But there is, of course, an ambition, as I said, from Poland towards playing a really important role in the region. And just to give you one telling example, it is the Three Seas initiative, so the Trimarium that Poland launched together with 11 other countries from the Three Seas regions of the Baltic, the Adriatic and the Black Sea. Germany was not invited to be part of the project at the beginning. As for last week, Germany got an open door and an invitation from Romania, but we will see how it develops further, since Poland remains skeptical towards German involvement in this project because of its ambition to play an important role, as I said in the beginning. So there is a tension from the Polish perspective towards Germany as an important security provider. And the third observation goes in the direction of the divergence attitudes towards Russia. And this is another restraint from the Poland perspective towards Germany as a security provider. And this is, I guess, the obvious one in the region. Of course, after the Crimea annexation and after the Russian aggression in the eastern Ukraine, German policy shifted. And I guess Barbara will probably refer to it in her intervention. But still, there is Nord Stream 2, as we all know. And Poland perceives this project extremely critical, I would say. And from the Polish perspective, it's not an economic project, as Angela Merkel argues, but it's a clearly political or even a geopolitical one that undermines, from the Polish perspective, European solidarity and the energy union that has been developed by the European Union. At the same time, this project brings back the biggest fear of Poland, Germany cooperating with Russia, I quote again, above our heads. So back to the history, and maybe some of you know that the Nord Stream 1 has been compared by Polish defense minister at the time to Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact. And the narrative around Nord Stream 2 is very similar in Poland nowadays. So this is again something that indicates growing mistrust. So I would say these are the three main questions that Poland has while thinking about Germany as an indispensable security partner in the region. At the same time, of course, Germany is an important partner, but I wouldn't say that for the current Polish government it's an indispensable partner, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I would like to ask a follow-up question, if I may. The process around Article 7, you probably saw that coming. Do you think that that could leave some kind of repercussions on the German-Polish relationship and probably the Polish-EU relationship at large?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I saw the question coming. I think that's the first question everybody asks me, actually, for I think a couple of months already. Actually, there's a recent development from yesterday. I don't know if you are aware of it, but our president, Andrzej Duda, nominated 15 judges against the probable ruling from the Court of Justice. So that's something which which already has a very bad consequence, because it's not easy to change, even if the verdict from the Court of Justice would be, and probably it would be, a verdict to reverse the nominations, which probably won't be held on by Poland. Of course, it's one of the main, I would say, difficulties in the Polish-German relationship, and not only, as you said rightly, in the Polish-German relationship, but of course it goes further to the Polish role in the European Union and to the Polish possible policy towards the European Union. Angela Merkel and also any other German politicians very openly criticize Poland, rightly so, because of these reforms. But unfortunately, from my personal perspective, Polish politicians so far keep ignoring the critics coming both from Berlin and from Brussels. So I would say that's the biggest challenge for the Polish-German relationship nowadays, and also from, as I said, from the relationship with Brussels. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry for being trivial actually in that case. I know you hear this a lot. Now let's turn to the results. I am personally surprised. Germany, but only as a regional player. Yes comes in second with 23%, and we have 30 votes in total. That almost comes as a bit of a provocation for the German policymakers and definitely gives them some food for thought. So perhaps we can comment this either in the panel or a bit later. But now allow me to continue with Barbara Kunz. Barbara, what are Germany's interests and reservations in the Baltic Sea region, and what should we expect in the future?
Very good question. Well, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation, of course. I'm not really claiming I'm an expert on Baltic Sea region security, but I can claim that I have a long-standing interest in the region. My master thesis, for instance, was about the upcoming NATO enlargement to the Baltic states and its consequences for Sweden. So that's a while ago. But the reasons might be sad, but I find it very interesting that we keep discussing Baltic Sea region security outside the circles that normally or previously used to deal with these. Now, regarding Germany here, and I know that I have the German hat on today, but I'm wearing this hat in Paris, which almost automatically gives you critical distance, very critical distance at times. So answering your first question, is Germany an indispensable partner in the Baltic Sea region? I would say yes, absolutely. I mean, Germany is an indispensable partner, full stop. The reasons for that is, well, geography, obviously, but I think the even more important reason is that who would be the alternative? Poland, as we heard, well, for many reasons, is not. The UK is leaving the European Union and probably can't play that role. France is not really interested in that role, although interest in the region is growing, but for reasons that are probably a bit different than the interests you may have here. So there's, in a way, only Germany left. Now, can Germany play that role in a military sense? No, obviously not, for the lack of capabilities, but also for a lack of political will. I mean, this is not to diminish the role of Germany and the EFP and Baltic air defense and so on, but the capabilities and the political is just not there, I guess, to do much more. But Germany is, of course, indispensable in political terms because it is a big EU member state, because it has this approach of listening to smaller states, which to me has always made the strength of Germany in the European Union. That said, getting to the second questions, what are Germany's interests and reservations? And I guess here, the picture is actually rather unclear to me. I mean, of course, overall peace and stability in the Baltic Sea region is an obvious interest for Germany. But when it comes to Berlin's approach to the Baltic Sea region, I would say that there is not really any unified approach to the region. I mean, much in the past has been dealt with at the Länder level. If you look at one key document in German politics that allows you to somehow take the pulse of many issues, the coalition agreement between the now governing parties, and if you search for Baltic Sea region, you will find it once, and it's in an environmental context. That also tells you many things, I guess. Not saying that the environment is not important, but tells you also something about the strategic importance of the region. So there is not really anything of like a holistic strategy, I would say, from a German perspective, which I guess is actually both positive and negative. And I will start with the positive aspect of the absence of a strategic approach, which also means that, and I mean, don't get me wrong on that, but which also means that Nord Stream 2 must not be overrated. I mean, Nord Stream 2 is important in terms of its consequences, of course, but I'm not talking about the intentions on the Berlin side. And I think that, I mean, seeing Nord Stream 2, giving it too much importance in the sense of German strategy is overrating it. So that's sort of the good news of an absence of a unified strategy on the Baltic Sea region. Now, the negative the negative aspect of this absence of a strategic approach is, of course, that there is not really a strategic, holistic approach. What that means is that also, maybe to finish on that note, on the main drivers, then why is Germany engaged in the Baltic Sea region, which is, I mean, there's no doubt that there is German engagement. I mean, we already quoted the EFP, and there were, of course, other examples. I'd say that the main driving force here, to me, is very obviously what is sometimes summarized as the Munich consensus, this new, if you will, German foreign policy discourse about engaging more and doing more on the international scene. And I guess that the EFP is one way of actually doing more. And in this way, it is a rather self-referential move. I mean, not only, but also a self-referential move to respond to Berlin's own discourse. Now, of course, the second very important driver is NATO solidarity. I mean, there are many reasons to be critical of Germany, but if there's one thing that I do absolutely not doubt, is that Berlin truly believes in NATO solidarity and alliance solidarity. But these are much more likely drivers than actual fear of Russia, for instance, which is not there. And to get to the second part of the question, then, what are the reservations for Germany in this context? Well, the reservations are derived from what I just said, and I think that is a true leadership role. If your main motivation to do something is derived from a perceived necessity to do more, that is not strategic, and because it's in a way empty, in the sense that it doesn't give you a direction of where you want to go. And this is the clearest limitation of the German approach to the Baltic Sea region. I don't see any ambitions of Germany to become a major Baltic power. And the second limitation, of course, it's perhaps a bit far-fetched, but I think also a clear red line for the Germans is anything really confrontational with Russia. I mean, you could see that in the discussions on the NATO-Russia Founding Act, for instance, before the Warsaw Summit. Last sentence, then, just to relativize a little bit what I just said, I would say that this vagueness or this lack of strategic approach to the Baltic Sea region is, of course, not limited to the Baltic Sea region, and that is something that should not be forgotten. I mean, the German approach to this region, of course, is embedded in a much larger context, especially with this Munich consensus discourse, and this vagueness as a general feature. I mean, just to finish on a Parisian perspective, Paris is waiting for a German answer to all of Macron's proposals, and I mean, there have been some beginnings of answers, but there's no real answer there. So the vagueness in German foreign policy extends beyond the Baltic Sea region.
Thank you very much. I will probably abstain from asking you a follow-up, as I think you're going to have to work quite a lot afterwards, because also most of my personal follow-ups are directed towards you. But ladies and gentlemen, I will ask you to work once more. I know you hoped you will have a break, but we will ask you to use the same application, slido.com, and type in a word that you associate with Germany's security policy. Can be any word, and in the end we're going to have a word cloud in order to have a proper perception, a representation just in this room. Now, let's continue with Ambassador Klava. So, in your opinion, is Germany an indispensable partner in the Baltic Sea region? What is Latvia's take on it?
Yeah, well, thank you. The short answer is yes, but I believe I have to continue.
Please do.
Well, no, I mean, I would like to start by expressing thanks to organizers for having this event, for organizing this event. I think it's a great idea to have this discussion. It's a very timely idea, actually, to have this discussion. And I will continue with sentence that for us here in Latvia, for the whole Baltic region, it's very important to understand and to follow what's going on in German politics in Germany. It's of utmost importance, and this is how to say, the process, political process that constantly evolves. It changes. It is in development. I mean, we have to be focused on first of all, of course, foreign policy experts, but by and large, I mean, what's going on in German politics. This is important in not only in Baltic region context, in security context, but also in the whole European, overall European context of the European Union, and also in transatlantic relations, of course. This question, is Germany indispensable partner in the Baltic Sea region? With answer yes, definitely. I think this is clear cut, and this has come out from I think all participants. But the trick is that there are many sub layers under this question. There are many follow-up questions to this first question. And of course, that some of them were already mentioned. I think with what kind of instruments this policy is being realized in Baltic Sea region. I mean, what is it? Soft security, hard security, and we already heard. I mean, that there are limitations do exist and distinction between diplomacy, economic might, or military tools. What is in the arsenal, so to say, of German policy. We see, however, I mean, whatever we might think about the German military posture, so to say, and military capabilities. Anyway, we see Germany's participation in the NATO battle group in Lithuania, and thank you, Germany, for that. I mean, this is very, very important. This solidarity is being valued very highly here in the region. Solidarity with partners in times of need. But of course, it raises a question about the capabilities and about the how much, what kind of resources are being spent on defense, of course. And I think currently it's 1.2% or something. And of course, this tantalizing question or teasing question for me, myself, is how things will change in German politics when Germany will have 2% of defense budget. I mean, in a longer perspective, it's an interesting question, hypothetical at the moment, but still very interesting how things will evolve. What kind of implications will be on policies? There is another sub-layer or follow-up question. What's about overall strategy and transatlantic relations? Germany and transatlantic relations. I follow as much as I can German political debate, and after change of administration in the United States, there are various, actually, the full spectrum of opinions expressed in Germany about how we are now on our own, and we have to, from one side, we have to take care of ourselves, but then from the other side, there is no delivery, so to say, as far as defense budget is concerned, or money devoted to the military needs. And the other thing is what kind of internal political consensus in Germany about the defense expenditure in how to say, in a longer perspective. Strengthening of European defense capabilities, sort of, yes, generally positive attitudes, but the devil is in the details. What does it really mean? Do we create just another headquarter, or enhance our military industry and that's it? Or we There have been several cartoons that we create new units, again being stationed somewhere in Strasbourg or around that geographical point. So, and those military things, especially in this particular situation, we in Baltics we take very seriously. This is really very close to our skin, how to say, question nowadays. Then, of course, there is this, another sub-layer is, of course, German-Russian relationship. Of course, it's a very important point, of course. And it is overlapping with European Union and Russian relationship, of course. Transatlantic, I mean, relationship and US-Russian relationship. It's all comes together. But the, how to say, of course, Germany is, we see also Germany as a kind of consensus builder in the region, and also in a wider spectrum in the whole European Union as a consensus building power. Of course, there are questions still without answer or being debated, which carry in themselves the potential risk potential, and they have been mentioned. One of them has been mentioned here. It's a Nord Stream 2. It's a big issue. Also here in Latvia, you will not find a great deal of enthusiasm about Nord Stream 2. But let's not hide out. I mean, it's also the issues concerning migration and the response to migration processes. Let's not hide away. Let's not shy away from those questions. I mean, those are really important questions, and they do affect, let's be honest, they do affect the political landscape and the whole of Europe. I mean, and we can see that from country to country there are significant changes when elections come up, and partially affected by this issue. How do we tackle, how do we deal with this issue of migration? But at the same time, I would say that we are in a great time of changes. This might sound very trivial, so to say, simplification, but since 2014 and since annexation of Crimea, since military aggression against Ukraine, I think the whole international system as we know it has been tested, is being tested as a kind of stress test, and of course it changes also to the better. I think European countries, European societies kind of force pushing us together. I mean, looking outwards, how we can cope with all those challenges coming from all around us. And it's not only military threat, but there's changing global economic environment, the fierce competition actually in global markets, and that has effect as well on our choices in foreign policy and security policy. But I would conclude by saying that and the very interesting thing is what we are observing is, of course, quite recent changes. People speak in Berlin about the new Ostpolitik, neue Ostpolitik. Well, mostly we can associate that with the actions, with the initiatives, or with the expressions, interviews coming from Foreign Minister Heiko Maas, and also this move that he went to Bucharest and he was attending the Three Seas Initiative summit. I mean, this is something new, actually. We have to see how it evolves, how it progresses, how it continues. And therefore, here comes in, of course, German internal politics, because it's a very complex picture when you look today in Germany. Actually, the foreign minister represents Social Democratic Party. The Social Democratic Party is sliding downwards in opinion polls, and actually, this is kind of, I wouldn't describe it as catastrophical, but it's kind of serious issue. And this internal political landscape in Germany is changing. To what extent, in what direction, that remains to be seen. But this is another issue which will affect Germany's views on several foreign policy issues. A couple of them I mentioned before. Well, I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Very much, but you asked more questions, definitely. So we will try to answer them in the short discussion. Firstly, I will ask you to once again use Slido if you have any questions. There's a section on questions and I can see them coming in live on my phone. And it will also be presented on the screen just after we review the word cloud. I think indeed the perceptions just live show that Germany's perception as a state in the Baltic Sea region is one of a cautious state, of a reserved state, and at the same time of a wise state. I assume we have 22 votes there, but certainly you can see that some of the perceptions are described as opportunism, even cowardliness, reluctance. Also something positive. It's a balanced approach with a lot of potential and with a long-term view. Perhaps there's initially a comment.
Yeah, if I may.
Please do.
I
Yes.
mean, well, we have to keep in mind that the Germany where it stands now today, it has not the right. It's not how to say. It's not a spot. It has history behind, of course. When there are given descriptions, cautious, pacifistic, or whatever, I mean, lack of military power. And there was a good interview of former German Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel, where he said about first encounter with Foreign Secretary of State Rex Tillerson when just I think right after it was. After the new administration was entering White House, and there was one of the first meetings, and Sigmar Gabriel said that the initial response from Rex Tillerson was that Ukraine, it's your problem. I mean, it's your European problem. Just deal with it. And there was, as we see now today. I mean, it's not like that. I mean, this is also evolving, but let it be. It's okay. And then the point from Foreign Minister Gabriel was that, look, I mean, you cannot ask from Germany to be a kind of military super trooper power at once, because previous 70 years or so, it was totally different politics that encouraged Germany to stay away from kind of military. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, to stay away from that, I mean, to refrain itself. And how you can ask, or you can ask, but you cannot expect that there will be immediate delivery, so to say, of those capabilities. I wanted to make this point when we see on the screen this evaluation. Thank you.
So as we're still waiting for some questions in the Slido poll, perhaps I can open the floor for some questions that you have, or maybe some remarks. Please, audience.
Hello, my name is Alexey Veselый, and I'm a journalist. I wanted to ask you a question about building stronger Europe. So how will German leadership in the Baltic Sea region contribute to stronger Europe? Will it create balance in Europe and cooperation, or EU will become more chaotic? Thank you.
This is a question to the whole panel, or perhaps you can choose who will take it up. Maybe I can take another question from the audience. Would you please pass it on?
Hello, thank you for the wonderful content. My name is Gaspar. I'm from Riga Graduate School of Law, and my question is as follows. Regarding the comments on political willingness, how should the Baltic State region approach the understanding of permanent structured cooperation, and should Germany take a leading position, which was already mentioned? Should it more look as in cooperation with France, or should it take a subsidiary role based on its political willingness and military capabilities, as PESCO is a military capability advancement project initiative? Thank you.
Perhaps another question? Please use the microphone as we are actually streaming live. Thank you very much.
Yes. It seems to me that from where I'm sitting, and that's at the back, I can see all of you. And that's a metaphor that if you want to understand Germany's politics in the Baltic Sea region, you have to take it in the context of what's going on in Europe. I mean, that seems obvious. You got to talk about the two together. Otherwise, it just doesn't make any sense. And the last question about CSDP just confirms that. So I would advise that as something that to keep in mind. The other thing, given the what do you call it, the comments by people and the cautiousness and all that kind of stuff, a little joke, black humor. Lenin said, if you meet mush, keep going. If you meet steel, back off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps, shall we perhaps start the round of answers? So, the first question is how to build a stronger Europe and how can Germany contribute to that? I assume there's an obvious suspect to answer this question, as I suspected before. Please.
Well, I'm not sure I have the answer, especially not in 2 minutes. But I might actually mix this question with the question on CSDP. I guess that, I mean, we I don't want to be too critical, but I mean, there's trouble in the EU in a number of issues. The ones you mentioned, you might add the Eurozone, and well, in a way, also the future of European security in the largest sense, not just CSDP. And what you can see in all these dimensions is that the fault lines or the camps of European countries are not the same on all these issues. It's not that in the EU there, as we used to have in the past, well, a bit simplistic perhaps, but there's no north versus south anymore, but there's a number of camps. And I think this complexity also means that the Baltic Sea region as such is probably, or I mean, German policy in the Baltic Sea region is not really relevant to the EU at large, because on some of these issues, the Baltics, or I mean, what's being called the Hanseatic League in the Eurozone context, for instance, is on the German side. On other issues, the same countries are on a different side. And that means that I don't think that's too relevant in a sense. I mean, not saying that the individual countries are not relevant in different settings, but it's so multifaceted that we move away from this sort of block policy. Now, with regard to PESCO, I mean, my take on that is that first, PESCO must not be overrated, because in the overall context of European security, PESCO is about that. Which is good. I mean, you have to start something, and anything that strengthens European capabilities is a good thing. That would be my take. Now, on the larger picture of where European security is going, I'd say that we and I invite you to read my chapter on that. There's a number of debates going on in Europe that are somewhat separated and not running parallel. I mean, you have the debate on the future of CSDP, properly speaking. You have the debate on the future of, well, NATO and all these things, which also in a way is a debate on territorial defense versus foreign interventions. And there are countries in Europe that have a preference, or I mean, that put more emphasis on this latter dimension. And there's the looming overarching question of the future of the transatlantic link. And here again, you have various camps, so to say. And I just to finish on that, if you look at the camps on all three questions, to me, what's interesting to see is that basically France and Germany are actually not in the same camp, which is a real obstacle to building a stronger Europe. And this is a very long way to get to an answer of what Latvia should do with PESCO, but I think that Latvia should, if I may give you a recommendation, Latvia should also see PESCO as one means of bringing these different strands of debate together, because in a way PESCO through the back door is just doing that. I mean, look at military mobility, this project, for instance. That's no longer just clear-cut CSDP as it's in the Lisbon Treaty about going south, but it's somewhat blurring lines. And I think it's in this blurring lines in a constructive way that the way forward lies, and where things should be done, and where I think that supporting PESCO is definitely worthwhile.
There's something to add, perhaps, please.
So just two fingers, so to say, on German leadership, if I may, which I think combines all the questions to some extent. So again, 3 observations that I would like to make. First of all, on German leadership, as I said, and I would like to poke another elephant in the room, namely Brexit. So as we all know, of course, the UK was very skeptical towards the common foreign and security policy, but paradoxically, at the same time, it also took leadership on several issues linked with CSDP, like, for example, sanctions. And with UK leaving the EU, the whole competence, and the whole, but a very major part of the competence on sanctions regime and issuing the sanctions within the EU will be gone. And here, for example, there are several experts in the Federal Foreign Office that I talked to, and they said they have to develop, as a Federal Foreign Office, more competences within sanctions regimes as the UK will be gone. So I guess there is a sense of a necessity to take, maybe not solely leadership, since it's not possible, but to take part in the leadership within security and foreign policy, of course, along France and other countries. The second aspect of the question is the 2% question with the budget. Of course, I mean, it's very important that I completely agree with you. Let's see how it develops, because it's just 1.2 now. But I think it's not only the question how much Germany spends, but also it's much more for me the question on what Germany spends and how Germany spends the money. And I think the discussion about that is still underdeveloped. So I think there has to be more discussion and more expertise and more plans about the future spending coming from German budget. And eventually, the last point that I would like to make, I don't know if you know the study conducted, I think already for a second time, by the European Council on Foreign Relations on the coalition power of member states within the European Union. And Germany scores very high. I think it's the country which is actually the most able one to build coalitions within the European Union, not only speaking about security, but also on economic issues and any other issues. And to your question, I guess, about how Germany and how the Baltic states, or how Germany can play a role in the Baltic states in terms of PESCO, I think it has been also said here, Germany is the perfect country to be a consensus builder, but also a coalition builder, so to link the interest of the Baltic states and of the Eastern Europe states with the Western, let's say, and with the Southern states. And I think it's also a way to go for the German country. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, I would like to reflect. Well, one thing about what Mr. Ekmanis was telling, this compares or this not joke, but actually it reflects reality. The diplomacy without military backing and political will actually to apply military instruments might not be successful in all situations, especially in times like these, like we have today. I mean, this is one clear-cut thing one has to learn in some countries, also in Europe, that we have to have military capabilities, and we have to have also will to apply those military capabilities in times of need. The second thing I think is how Germany can make, how we all can make the stronger Europe is I think it requires simply a political prudence. One has to be smart, and one has to act in a smart way. I mean, not to enlarge controversies. There are many around us, and not to ignite new disputes, but rather try to solve those already existing troubles, problems, and so on. And in this context, I would say, it's of course my personal opinion, but I think when we look at all those I don't know differences of views, opinions in Europe now. I mean, when we look at our region, of course, the one thing is clear cut in the longer strategic perspective is that Poland and Germany, they need each other. I mean, whatever you say today, but in the longer perspective, I mean, this kind of looking strategically, Poland and Germany needs each other. I'm not going to speculate who needs who more and so on. Let's leave that aside. But I mean, those countries, they need each other. I mean, they only by acting together there is really real strength coming out of that. And as for Latvia, of course, we need both. We need Germany. We need Poland. Good relations, good cooperation with both of those countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, in terms of the more modern technological solution we have, I think the first question was definitely answered already, and we're kind of talking about the second one all the time. So perhaps let's turn to the third one. More of a regional perspective. German and Latvian presidency at the Council of the Baltic Sea states. Sorry, yeah, there it is. There's many, I'm sorry, I just lost it. Yeah, and about Baltic Sea states' reluctance or active participation and contribution. And let's take another one. How would you assess the role of Angela Merkel in German foreign policy? Please, Amelie.
Well, I can at least say a little bit about the role of Angela Merkel, mainly, of course, from a Danish perspective, since that's what I'll be talking about today. And there's a pretty clear agreement that, at least in Denmark, Angela Merkel is perceived to be a good thing for German politics, because she has this very calm and perceptive way of dealing with things, and she waits until she responds, and then she responds in a generally smart and thought through way. That's at least the perception in Denmark. So when it comes to security matters, coming sort of from the fact that Denmark does not focus as much on Germany as a security partner, and has the opt-out from the European Union for security and defense matters, it is still sort of, Merkel plays a huge role in the sense that she seems a stable partner. She seems to be reasonable, right? As someone who acts in a predictable and reasonable way. And that's very much the people I spoke to oppose that very much to Donald Trump, for example, which then goes back to the increasing role that Germany should be playing from a Danish perspective when it comes to regional security and Danish security.
Anybody else at this point? Well, please do.
I have a question for the Polish colleague. In regards to the role of US and it changed after Trump administration, could one, in what way did it change inside Poland, the relationship towards Germany? Because I feel there was a shift and it got more aggressive or more, let's say, concrete to back Poland as a leader for some countries in East Europe to kind of pose opposition from inside towards Brussels, and to kind of, if one would see it and interpret it negatively, to kind of implode the union or going towards that. And if that is the case, and now I want to give maybe an answer to the question you asked regarding Germany's leadership. I think Germany's answer would be, and I voted for the regional leadership being a German, we do not necessarily want to have a leading role in the Baltic states. We want to be equally, we want to have a eye-level relationship. And if there is a threat that goes beyond then that's a European problem, and it should be addressed by all 28 or by NATO. And so there is not much of a role for Germany to play as an individual country here. That's, I think, the answer. But I would be interested how you view this, because I perceive Washington as really pursuing a kind of aggressive, almost, or passive-aggressive course, and it would be very bad news, of course.
Thank you very much. Just a quick vote. Perhaps we can once again engage all of the audience. Merkel as the next president of European Commission, yes or no? The ones who say yes, please raise your hands. Please do, audience, the panel. There we go. Is there a comment, perhaps? Maybe a comment from the audience. So she doesn't want the job. Good. That's, I think, one of the answers. Shall we proceed? Can I ask to pass the microphone to the very end, and then we will...
Yeah. Sorry, it's me again. I think it's the third question there.
Please turn on the mic.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I won't repeat what I said. I think the third question down about nuclear capabilities. This is an interesting question, but there's a preceding question that we haven't really raised, which has become a part of at least of the official European Union documents. If you like, it appears in many, many European Union documents, and that is strategic autonomy. And what does that mean? European Union folks, or bureaucrats, or even, I guess, politicians subscribe to this idea of strategic autonomy. We won't go into how it all developed, but the question is, I guess, where does Germany stand on the question of strategic autonomy in relation, say, to France, and the impact that that whole discussion could have on transatlantic relationships? Because at the Riga conference, my old friend Hans Binnendijk said, if you keep pushing the strategic autonomy, be careful, you may get it.
Thank you very much. I must give the floor to... Is there any other interventions on your side? No?
Yeah. Okay, there was this question about the Poland, U.S. administration, how they view Poland and Brussels and the whole cloud. I think it's no. I would, if the question would be addressed to me, I would say that no. How I see this, the attitude of the American administration towards Poland is, I mean, they are very practical people. They look at numbers, and then you see what kind of army who has in the region. And Poland has armed forces, 100,000 standing armed forces. At one time, General Kujat was making a joke. He said that after one purchase of Leopard battle tanks from Germany, the Polish Leopard tank fleet was larger than that of Germany's Bundeswehr. So, and the difference is that the Polish tanks are rolling, actually, all of them, as far as we know. Well maintained, that means. I think Americans are looking at numbers simply. In military strategic terms, they see 100,000 army soon to be enlarged to what, 150? And that's basically, to a large extent, standing army. I mean, those territorial defense units might be different, but it's a serious force. And Poland is spending about 10 billion, US dollars, I think, per year on defense. What it means in comparative terms, Russians are spending about 63 billion euros on the whole of Russia defense, including maintaining nuclear forces and global positioning satellites. Just imagine in proportional terms how well equipped then is the Polish army. and motivated. And I think Americans are very practical people. They look at numbers and simply they see how forces are related in the region, and that's their calculation. The rest is probably they leave to Europeans, basically. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I must say that I also want to leave you some time to have some more informal chats at the coffee break. So thank you very much once again for coming. I think this really has been an incredibly rich discussion. Perhaps a round of applause for all of our panelists today. And just very briefly, I wanted to say that this project happened and was successful also because of Cynthia Broka, a researcher at the Latvian Institute of International Affairs. So thank you very much, Cynthia, for all the work you've done for this project. And I would want to say that I think this project has not only been a step into the direction of advancing the partnership of Germany and the Baltic Sea states, but it has definitely created some friendships that I personally will keep for hopefully the rest of my life. Thank you very much for coming and have a great day.